As we know, Jack Smith has now appealed this. Do you expect that appeal to be successful? And even if it is, how long would that process take?
Yes, it certainly was a remarkable, unprecedented decision, as you noted. Just recently, there were courts in D.C. and Virginia and an appellate court that upheld the appointment of a special counsel. And so this is really an outlier decision. I think now with the appeal in the 11th Circuit, Jack Smith, there has been delay in this case, but it has not come from Jack Smith. He has moved very swiftly, and so I'm not surprised to see him move swiftly here. Certainly the law, the precedent, is on the side of Special Counsel Jack Smith being able to go forward with the classified documents and obstruction of justice case that he has in Florida. But I think the question is, how long does it all take? Not just at the 11th Circuit, which is the next appeal, but also the United States Supreme Court, if it gets there. And what will the conservative supermajority on the Supreme Court do with the case? We've already seen former President Trump get a victory in the presidential immunity case stemming out of the January 6th case that's pending in D.C. So, this was another victory for him, but I think we'll see how long it lasts, given the fact that a longstanding precedent, constitutional text and history are on the side of the special counsel here.
Well, should Jack Smith's appeal fail, if this effort fails, Elizabeth, what does that mean for his January 6th trial?
Well, just first on the Classified Documents Espionage Act obstruction case, there are options even just outside of Jack Smith himself. The ruling from Judge Cannon didn't have anything to do with the merits of the case. I think it's important to note that. So the charges, my understanding is they could be refiled by the U.S. attorney in Florida. Perhaps they could even be filed in another jurisdiction where they could tie that jurisdiction to some mishandling of classified defense information under the Espionage Act or the obstruction. So there are still options for that particular case itself. With respect to the January 6th case, where the special counsel is obviously pursuing that in D.C., in that jurisdiction, the appellate court has said that the special counsel appointment process that has been used by Democratic and Republican presidents alike for decades, they've said that's constitutional. So I don't think that Judge Cannon's ruling would affect the proceedings with respect to this appointments clause issue in D.C.
Well, we actually spoke about this with a member of the House Judiciary Committee earlier today here in Milwaukee. Republican Congresswoman Victoria Spartz of Indiana joins us on this question around the constitutionality of special counsels. And this is what she said, Elizabeth.
I would say that we need to really have a serious conversation about usage of special counsels. I've noticed what's happening. We have all this investigation going, so no one can ask questions. There is no transparency. Then statute of limitation expires, so no one is bringing charges, and there is no really consequences for doing some things that are pretty serious.
Elizabeth, is there a danger here that a genie potentially gets let out that can't actually be put back in the bottle in terms of how the Department of Justice may be able to conduct itself with these appointments going forward?
Well, the idea behind special counsels is to have more accountability to the rule of law and not less. And I think there's a little bit of an irony here that, former President Trump has been saying repeatedly to anyone who will listen that this is a witch hunt being orchestrated by President Biden and Democrats. And then we have, on the other hand, Attorney General Merrick Garland and other members of the Department of Justice assuring their independence. And then we have Judge Cannon saying this morning that the problem is that Jack Smith is too independent, that he should be more accountable to the president, who she says should be appointing him, and the democratically led Senate, which should confirm him, she says, under her understanding of the Constitution. So there's a little bit of an irony there, but I'm sure former President Trump is happy to have the win either way. But the way that the special counsels have been used have been to try to ensure that there is no fear or favor when it comes to accountability to the rule of law, even for very powerful people like former presidents. So the idea that getting rid of the special counsel will somehow lead to more accountability is not something that we've seen history bear out. And certainly that was not the Supreme Court's impression when it decided the U.S. v. Nixon case, which has been used to defend the constitutionality of special counsels and special prosecutors for decades.
Elizabeth, we're talking to you from Milwaukee with the RNC, the backdrop of our programming this week. Other than the sentencing that Donald Trump faces from the New York trial in September, is there anything else now, when you look at the timeline, that from a legal perspective could derail his run for the presidency?
Well, from a legal perspective, I think that, even if he were convicted by a jury of his peers in these cases, that alone would not, as a technical matter, be enough to derail his presidency. But I think his run for the presidency and possible victory. But I think what it does signal to the American people is that this is a decision that they need to make in the ballot box, even if a decision cannot be reached in the jury box before the presidential election is held in November. And so, we are probably going to see more information about former President Trump's involvement in inciting the January 6th insurrection and the attempted thwarting of the will of the people from the 2020 election and the peaceful transfer of power in that case. We'll likely to see some of that information when the district court in D.C. does sift through these issues of presidential immunity that were remanded from the Supreme Court. So the American people might be getting more information, even if there are not jury verdicts being rendered before November. And I think, one thing that is interesting in all of this is that it is highlighting the role of the Supreme Court and its importance and the way in which elections matter for the courts, because courts matter. One of the reasons we have this Judge Cannon ruling is likely very much that Justice Thomas, a conservative justice on the Supreme Court, issued a concurrence in the presidential immunity case saying, hey, I'm writing this to give a potential green light to other judges who are considering the special counsel constitutionality. So we're seeing a lot of focus on other parts of the government that people will keep in mind when they go to the ballot box.